Hey guys, it's ayebeepee and welcome back to my channel. Today we are here with another talking CJ, and this one is a little different. I decided to choose somebody today that is considered one of the founding fathers of criminology. As a disclaimer, almost everything he claimed has now been proven wrong, and hardly anybody follows what he did. But what he chose to look into and study and the conclusions he came to did give stepping stones for other theorists to come around to help try to figure out crime a little more, even if it was solely just to prove that he was wrong. So today we are talking about Cesare Lombroso, and I'm going to go ahead and say I barely have grasp of the English language sometimes, so if I pronounce any of these Italian things or European names wrong, sorry. I'm really doing my best. So let's jump right in. So Cesare Lombroso was born in Verona, Italy on November 6, 1835. His name was actually Ezekiel Marco Lombroso, and of course he was Italian. He grew up Jewish and actually came from a long line of rabbis. His family was wealthy for the most part. His father was Aaron Lombroso, and he was a tradesman in Verona. His mother was Zephora Lynn, and she lived near Turin. He studied at multiple universities. He studied at the University of Vienna, the University of Paris, and the University of Pavia, where he did his graduating thesis on endemic Cretinism, and he settled on getting a degree in medicine from the University of Padua. He really wasn't that spiritual till the end of his life. For a long time, he was very skeptical. He considered himself an atheist, but he did know that he truly believed in Darwinism. But near the last part of his life, he really started to experiment with mediumism and believed there actually were spirits. He did really enjoy listening to one person, but this really made him start thinking about all the work he did and what he actually wasn't right about. But his daughter really did believe that he was losing his mind and his physical health to arteriosclerosis, and that is why he had this sudden change in spiritualism. On April 10th, 1870, he did marry Nina de Benedetti, and they had 5 children, in which Gina, one of his daughters, helped edit and publish his work after he died. His career was pretty extensive. He bounced around, it seemed, a little bit with career paths. In the 1850s, during the Austro-Italian War, he actually was an army physician. And by 1866, he was appointed the visiting lecturer at Pavia. In 1871, he actually took over an insane asylum in Pesaro and became the director. And this is actually where he started having quite a fascination with criminal behavior and what could cause you to be a criminal. This is where he truly started watching people to see what they had in common. In 1876, he became a forensic medicine professor at Turin. He was the first professor at Turin that specialized in mental health. And this is also around the time that he wrote his most famous book, The Criminal Man, which we'll talk about a little later. This Criminal Man actually had 6 editions in Italian and was published in different European languages. By the 1880s, his theories had skyrocketed into fame. The government in Italy actually used his theories to help decide what you could try people for an insanity plea for. Lombroso, and I will get into a little bit of this in a second, but he truly didn't believe that humans had free will. He thought everything we did was based on biological factors and things that we have inherited. So to him, it didn't really make sense to try people for crimes that technically he didn't think they could control doing. And Lombroso is thought to have the credit of the person that really helped the beginning of the criminally insane asylums and forensic psychiatry in Italy. The criminally insane would be treated as a mental illness and not be just put in prison to, like in America, pretty much rot. Most have been shut down around the world at this point, but we have seen, because of this, prisons incorporating mental health care into their facilities. And by 1900, he had 3 of his books translated to English by this point. He also did years of autopsies and studying people that have already passed. He studied criminals, he studied normal people, and the insane. I also would like to put a disclaimer that I'm using the language that he used. I'm not trying to be offensive at all. I'm not trying to be rude to anybody. This is just the language they used at this time for the most part, such as the insane. What exactly did he do in his research methods? He was one of the first to study crime and criminals. He really looked at skull dimensions most, but he did measurements all over the body. He examined over 4,000 offenders, whether they were living or dead, to identify whether there were certain physical things that matched in all of them if they were criminals. So he measured height, he measured weight, the span of your arms, the average height of a body while seated, the size of your hands, necks, thighs, legs, feet. I mean, he measured pretty much everything on these bodies. And he also claimed to be the founder of modern scientific psychiatry. He was one of the first to actually use the word criminology, and he also claimed that he was who founded the cause of crime. And like I said, he truly encouraged not putting people in prison because he truly didn't think humans had free will. So it's not like someone chose to be a criminal. He really pushed work programs and mental health care and being put in these asylums so you could be more treated than punished. And you'll be able to go out into society and blend in better once you're free. So Cesare Lombroso is mostly known for his born criminal theory. Like I said, he truly believed being a criminal was inherited, and he believed that these people that were criminals were actually part of a primitive stage of evolution, which means that they actually never reached like humanhood, that they're actually more like the monkeys beforehand. He called them genetic throwbacks, and that he thought that they were a human subspecies. And he said this is why they were untamed and couldn't blend into society. He believed that people who were criminals suffered from more physical and mental issues than people who didn't commit crime. He thought that it was very easy to tell someone was a criminal by their physical features, such as a sloping forehead, ears that were unusual size, usually larger, flattened or upturned noses, high cheekbones, large jaws that sometimes protruded forward, asymmetric faces, excessive lengths of arms, and baldness. He also claimed that criminals suffered from less sensitivity to touch or pain, nearsightedness, no guilt for your actions. They were more self-centered, impulsiveness, and later in his career, he also added that there could be environmental factors such as poverty, the opportunities you're presented in life, and the environment you grow up in. But he also believed that certain criminals had certain features, so you should be able to tell which people were going to commit what crime. He also believed that there was another side of it that were called criminaloids. They only occasionally committed crime or like crimes of passion. He didn't think that people that just randomly committed 1 or 2 crimes should be linked into being inherited criminals. So these were like his little anomalies of what he was studying. He also, this one's funny, he also linked being a criminal to left-handedness. He studied sex workers and criminals to come to this conclusion. He believed left-handedness led to more disabilities, and that mostly it led to neurodegeneration and alcoholism. And this theory was widely accepted in the 20th century. So technically, my son would have been considered a criminal, all because he's left-handed. In this research he did truly impacted the way people viewed crime, because for so long it was thought to be a moral dilemma that people had. But now we are starting to think that people actually can't control it at all. So he published a lot of work. So we're going to talk about 3 of the major ones, but some commonalities in his writing were that, of course, and some commonalities though in all his work was that mental illness was very much able to be predicted based on physical characteristics, and that if you had tattoos, you were more prone to commit crime, and that tattoos were actually linked to borderline personality disorder. So the first book we are going to talk about is The Criminal Man. I mentioned it a little earlier. It was published in 1876, and he called these features that you're born with that causes you to be a criminal atavistic. Atavistic had derived from the word atavis, which is Latin for ancestor, and this is where he actually listed the features that you could tell which person was going to commit what crime. So for a thief, he claimed that you would have an expressive face, manual dexterity, and small wandering eyes. If you were a sex offender, the only thing he really listed was thick lips and protruding ears. And this is where a lot of people say he's hinting to actually African American males. For a woman sex offender, though, you would have shorter, more wrinkled, darker hair and a smaller skull than normal women. And for a murderer, you have to have cold, glassy stares, bloodshot eyes, and a big hawk-like nose. He also wrote another book that kind of went along with The Criminal Man that was called The Criminal Woman, and it was pretty much the same type of book, but they did specify more towards women and how to estimate if these people were criminals. He studied a lot of normal people and prostitutes for this book and claimed that female criminals were actually rare and that they show very little signs. He then also wrote a book called The Man of Genius. This was published in 1889, and he went in very much detail in this book about how he believed a genius was very closely linked to madness. He believed that being very artistic linked to you being insane, and he really studied psychiatric art to prove this. This is obviously now considered a completely outdated mindset, but this work really inspired people to go out there and do research, even if it was just to prove him wrong. And he used measurements such as facial angles, abnormalities in bone structure, and measurements of the skull. So the American Journal of Psychiatry came out and spoke out about this book, saying that he only halfway told the truth on a lot of his research, and that he completely misinterpreted it, and he was just making assumptions. So one thing that Cesare Lombroso is very much known for is being the founder of the Italian school of positivist criminology. He did not agree with the classical type of schooling, which was that rational choices in crime were character traits, not necessarily caused by biological things. And like I said, he is known to be one of the most controversial criminal theorists out there. His research that he did definitely does not hold up to standards now, but this was in the 1800s. I would hope that we would grow in our research skills. But things people have complained about is the fact that he didn't use a control group to really base these measurements off of. He didn't really go through his findings critically, and that he really just didn't interpret his studies well. And just overall, he has been pretty much proven wrong on all of it. He did at some point acknowledge in his work that there was a lot more social and psychological factors that had to do with committing crime than biological factors, but that was pretty much near the end of his life. He did die on October 19th, 1909. He donated his skull and brain to be studied, and in his will he had written for his colleague to use his skull and brain to base it off of his own theories. His head was preserved in a jar, in which I'm pretty sure it's still on display in his collection in the Museum of Psychiatry and Criminology in Turin. And colleges, especially in Italy, have completely abandoned his theories since World War II. And further looking into these theories, it showed that he 100% supported eugenics, which is not great. So people don't really take him as seriously as they used to. And that is what I have for Cesare Lombroso. Leave your comments below on what you think. Do you think that his theories have any merit? And also, what other theorists in criminology have you looked into? Also, go ahead and leave below any comments and go ahead and leave below any suggestions for the Talking CJs. And thank you guys so much for watching. Please like and subscribe for me and hit that notification button. That way you're notified the next time I upload. And also don't forget that there is a GoFundMe in the description box below for Crystal Young. If you haven't, go back and rewatch her video to find out why exactly her mom needs this PI that's reached out to her. And also, I'm still selling stickers to raise money for the Cold Case Foundation. All proceeds go to them, so it is for a good cause. That website is also linked below. Alright guys, again, thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye!